Porchlight History for Sleep. Episode 3. 1 year in a Lowcountry fishing village, 1900. Good evening, and welcome back to Porchlight History. As always, there is nothing you need to do now. Nothing to remember, nothing to decide, and nothing sudden ahead. Just a long, slow story, told quietly, while the day lets go of you. Tonight we're going to spend 1 full year, all 4 seasons of it, in a small fishing village on the South Carolina coast, right at the turn of the century. The year 1900. A place of a few dozen houses under the live oaks, a line of docks on a tidal creek, a fleet of small wooden boats, and a way of living that ran, from one January to the next, entirely on what the water decided to give. Nobody in this village is famous. Nothing in this story makes the newspapers. That is exactly why we're going. This is the kind of place history mostly forgot to write down, and the kind of place this channel exists to remember. So settle in. Let your shoulders soften. The tide is turning, and the year is about to begin. Part 1. The Village. Come in by water, because everything comes in by water here. The creek winds up from the sound through miles of marsh, gold brown this time of year, and then the trees rise ahead, a dark green wall of live oak and cedar and pine on a low bluff, and under the trees, the village. It is not much to look at, and it is everything. A few dozen houses, weathered gray or whitewashed, standing up on brick piers under oaks so old and so wide that the whole village lives in their shade. Spanish moss in every branch. Sandy lanes, no 2 of them straight. A white wooden church with a small steeple. A store with a porch. And down at the waterfront, the working heart of it all, the docks. The docks are built of palmetto piling and rough plank, patched and repatched, running out over the pluff mud to reach deep water at low tide. Along them lie the boats, and we should look at the boats properly, because they are the village's living. Most are small open sailboats, 20 feet and something, wide and shallow and handy, rigged simply so 1 or 2 men can work them. Some were built right here on the shore, by eye, out of local cypress and pine and oak knees, by men who never drew a plan in their lives and never built a bad boat either. Alongside them, the bateaus, the flat-bottomed rowing skiffs. Every family owns the way inland families own a mule. And hauled up on the bank, half-built or half-repaired, always at least 1 more boat, because a fishing village is never finished making boats. There is no ice house here to speak of, no engine anywhere, no telephone, and the railroad is a long wagon ride away. What this village has is the creek, the sound beyond it, the ocean beyond that, and about 300 years of accumulated knowledge of what lives in all 3 and how to catch it. The year here does not run January to December, whatever the calendar says. It runs season to season, run to run, by water temperature and moon and tide. So let's live it the way they lived it, starting in the cold. Part 2. Winter. The oyster months. January, and the village wakes in the dark to frost on the dock planks, which happens just often enough here to be remarked on. Winter is oyster season, the months with an R in them, when the water is cold and the oysters are fat and safe and at their best. And oystering is cold, wet, heavy, honest work, and it feeds the village through the lean turn of the year. At first light, on a falling tide, the bateaus go out. Not far. The oysters grow in racks and clusters along the banks of the creeks, exposed as the water drops, gray-shelled and rough as old concrete. The men and boys work them with heavy tongs and with gloved hands and short iron culling hammers, knocking the clusters loose, breaking them apart, throwing back the small ones, loading the keepers aboard until the skiff rides low and the tide starts making again, and it is time to row home ahead of it. Some of the catch is sold, hauled by sail or by wagon toward town, where the raw houses and the canneries pay by the bushel. Cash money in winter and welcome, but the best of it stays home, because winter on this coast has one great social institution, and you already know its name if you have been with this channel a while: the oyster roast. A fire on the bank in the blue dusk, a sheet of iron laid over it, oysters shoveled on, wet croaker sacks thrown over the oysters, and the steam doing the rest. The whole village drifting toward the light of it, hands in coat pockets. The clatter of shells, the knives working, the talk. Somebody's dog patrolling the edges of the firelight with the seriousness of a deacon. It costs nearly nothing, it feeds everybody, and it turns the coldest season into the most companionable one. And through the winter, on the days too rough or too cold to work the banks, the village does its indoor fishing. Network. This is the season of knitting and mending, and if you were to walk the lanes on a gray January afternoon, you would see them through the windows and on the sheltered porches. Men and women both, a wooden needle full of twine moving in the hands, a growing wing of net gathered in the lap, worked in the old knots at speed, without looking, the way other people knit socks. A cast net for the boy who's big enough for his own this spring. A new seine wing to replace what the sharks tore up in October. The village literally makes its own tools out of string every winter and has for 200 years. Part 3. Spring. The water wakes up. You can smell the season turn before you can see it. A softness gets into the wind off the sound. The marsh, gray all winter, shows green at the roots. And one morning somebody on the dock says the water's warming, and everyone understands the whole sentence that isn't said, which is, they'll be moving soon. Spring is the season of the runs, when the fish that wintered offshore or down south come back along the coast and up the rivers, each kind on its own schedule, and the village meets them like relatives at a station. The shad come first, up the rivers to spawn while the nights are still cold, silver and deep-bodied, and bound upstream. The village sets its drift nets in the river reaches and works them by night and early morning. And for a few weeks there is shad on every table and shad roe in every pan, and barrels of shad packed for town. Then the mullet begin to school along the beaches and in the creeks, and the whiting bite comes on in the surf, and the sheep's head move onto every rock and wreck and piling, striped like convicts and stealing bait like professionals. The spot tails, the big red channel bass, prowl the sloughs. Every day now the water is more crowded than the day before. And in the creeks behind the village, the small industry that never stops picks back up its pace. The cast nets working the shallows for shrimp and mullet and menhaden, for the table and for bait. Boys who got their first nets at Christmas stand on the dock and practicing the throw, teeth in the lead line, shoulders turning, learning the day-long patience of it, watching their circles land like wet handkerchiefs, half open, while some grandfather watching from a porch calls out the same 3 words of advice his own grandfather called out to him. Spring is also fitting out time. The boats hauled and scraped and painted, seams paid, rigging gone over, sails patched on the loft floor of somebody's barn. Because everything the summer and fall will ask of the fleet is coming, and the fleet means to be ready. Part 4. Summer. The long blue days. Summer mornings in the village start in the dark on purpose to beat the heat and catch the tide. Lanterns move along the lanes toward the dock. Coffee has been drunk standing up. The boats go out with the land breeze of first light, sails just full, down the Silver Creek in single file, out past the last marsh point as the sun comes up out of the ocean and lays a road of light straight at them. And every man aboard has seen it 10,000 times, and none of them has ever quite stopped noticing it. Some boats work the sound, seining and gill netting. Some anchor up on the shell banks for weak fish and croaker, which around here have always been summer trout and hardhead. And some, on the settled days, stand offshore for the bottom fish, the blackfish banks, handlining sea bass and porgy on the live bottom miles out, the way the famous small boat fleets of this coast had done for generations. Little open sailboats far at sea, each crew reading the weather with everything they had, because the weather was the one thing offshore that could not be negotiated with. It is worth pausing on who was in those boats, because on this coast the answer matters and deserves saying plainly. Very many of the fishermen of the Carolina coast in 1900 were black men, gullah watermen, heirs to the boat skill and net skill and water knowledge we talked about in our rice episode, now worked for their own account. Out of Charleston itself sailed the most famous fleet of them all, the little armada the city called the Mosquito Fleet, dozens of small open boats, black-owned and black-crewed, that went out past the bar to the Blackfish grounds nearly every working day and came home in the afternoon to sell the catch at the market, and whose sailors were known up and down the coast for their seamanship and for singing on the water. Our village is smaller and quieter than Charleston, but it is part of the same world, and in its boats, as in most things on this coast, the knowledge is black and white together, unevenly credited, deeply intertwined, and very old. By early afternoon, the fleet is coming home on the sea breeze, and the dock becomes the village's town square. The catch handed up in baskets. The buying and the trading and the arguing, none of it meant unkindly. Fish cleaned on the cleaning boards, pelicans and gulls holding their convention just off the pilings. What isn't sold or eaten is salted down in barrels or split and smoked, because there is no ice to speak of, and the preserving arts are as much a part of fishing as the nets. And then the long golden back half of a summer day, which the village spends the way sensible hot country people always have. Slowly, supper early, porches after, children swimming off the dock in the creek at slack tide, their voices carrying over the water in that particular way evening water carries voices. Somebody picking a guitar somewhere. The smell of salt and wood smoke and fried fish over the whole village like a blessing. Part 5. The Storm Glass. Late summer. We will not spend long here, but no true year on this coast skips it. From late August, the village lives with one eye on the sky, exactly as the farm folk and the lighthouse keepers in our other stories did, because this is the hurricane season, and a fishing village is the most exposed thing on the whole coast. Its houses low, its living tied up at a dock, its men at sea. The village reads the signs it has always read. The swell arriving from a storm still hundreds of miles off, making the surf on the front beach boom out of a clear sky. The high thin mare's tail clouds. The strange amber light. The old men on the store porch, who have felt this before, going quiet in a particular way. When the signs turn serious, the drill is old and calm. Boats stripped and anchored heavy up the creeks in the marsh shelter, or hauled out entirely. Shutters up, water drawn, everything that can blow away brought in, everything that can float tied down. And then the waiting, families together in the strongest houses, listening to the wind come up through the oaks in the dark. Most years, the storm passes wide, and the village exhales, and the boats come back down the creek, and life picks up where it set things down. Some years it does not pass wide, and the village rebuilds, as this coast has always rebuilt, with borrowed lumber and shared labor and no particular self-pity. We have told that story in this series before and will not dwell on it tonight. It is enough to say, the village endures. That is one of the main things a village like this knows how to do. Part 6. Fall. The shrimp and the mullet. And then comes the reward. Fall, on the Carolina coast, is the water's harvest time, and 1900 is right at the edge of the Great Change, the years when shrimp were becoming money. All summer the young shrimp have been growing in the marsh nurseries, and now, as the water cools, they gather and move, sweeping down the creeks toward the sea on the falling tides, and the village goes to meet them. Cast nets at the creek mouths on the last of the ebb, thrown until shoulders ache, the nets coming up heavy and rattling. Haul seines worked off the banks by crews of men, a wing of nets swept around and drawn slowly ashore, everyone leaning on the lines, the bag coming in at last boiling with shrimp and mullet and everything else the tide was carrying. Shrimp boiled outright, shrimp dried on sheets in the sun the old way, shrimp carted to town while they're fresh, where dealers are paying better every single year. And with the first real cold snaps come the roe mullet, schooling and running the beaches and acres, and the mullet crews camp on the front beach for days at a stretch, watching from the dunes for the dark moving stain of a school in the surf, then launching through the breakers to strike the net around them. Mullet salted by the barrel is winter insurance, and smoked mullet is its own religion, and for a few weeks the whole village smells gloriously of oak smoke and fish. The year is rounding toward home now. The boats are hauled one by one as the runs taper. The nets are dried and stowed in the lofts. The oyster tongs come down off their nails and get their handles oiled. And on some sharp blue afternoon in late November, somebody builds the first oyster fire of the season on the bank, and the village drifts toward the light of it, hands in coat pockets, and the whole year, you notice, has quietly come back around to where we began. Part 7. What the Village Knew. Let's stand back from the year, one moment, before we let it go, and say what it added up to. Nobody in this village was rich, and nobody was going to be. The work was hard on backs and hands, chancy with weather, and paid in a currency of fish and barter and small cash money. By every ledger the new century was learning to keep, this was a poor place. And yet, the village fed itself, richly, from its own water every single day of the year. It built its own boats and made its own nets and trained its own children in arts that took a lifetime and were worth one. It knew its home ground, every creek and bank and slough of it, with an intimacy that no map has ever captured. Its work ran on wind and tide and muscle and skill, and its evenings ran on porches and singing and firelight. It took care of its own, because there was no one else who would, and it never once, in living memory, let a family go hungry within its reach. There are kinds of wealth the ledgers of 1900 had no column for. The village had most of them. The engines came, in the years after our year, and then the ice plants and the highways and the seafood houses, and that world changed the way all worlds change, gradually and then completely. The villages are mostly quiet now, or grown into towns, and the fleets are steel and diesel where they survive at all. But go to the right creek mouth on the right October evening, even now, and you may still see a lone figure on a dock end, turning at the shoulders, throwing a handmade circle of net out over the falling tide, exactly, precisely, as it was thrown in 1900 and in 1800 and long before. Some knowledge refuses to die. On this coast, A good deal of it lives in the wrists. Closing. That was 1 year in a Lowcountry fishing village at the turn of the last century, told as truly as it can be told this far downstream. The tide that ran that village is running tonight, out past the towns and the lights, in and out of the same old creeks, right on time. Thank you for spending this night with Porchlight History. The music will carry on from here, so there is nothing to reach for and nothing left to do. The boats are in, the nets are hung, the fire on the bank is burning low. Sleep well. Good night.